Welcome everyone to MailFuzz TV. I am Peter, that is Connor, and we are going to talk about Outlander Season 1 Episode 8. It is called Both Sides Now. So, full spoilers for the episode as always. And technically this was the episode we said we'd do up to and then decide if we were going to continue. But we kind of already decided we would at least watch the full season, just based on the quality of the first, 6 episodes. So
yeah, I mean, technically, you like say this is the judgment point. But I don't think we really needed to talk about it.
No.
It was pretty clear that, like I said, unless this episode would have had to have been awful. Really awful.
It would have had to have shit the bed spectacularly for us to be like, no, we're done. Yeah, it's an interesting episode because this one obviously gives us some Frank in 1945, about 6 weeks after Claire's disappeared, which I'm going to guess is maybe about how long she's spent in the past as well, maybe?
Yeah, I'd have said it felt like a little bit longer than that, personally. Yeah, but maybe they're just...
I think them specifying that makes me feel like that's how long it's been for her as well.
I agree. Ultimately, it felt longer, but yeah, if they're gonna tell us that, we'll just go with it.
Yeah, it's fine. So we get a little bit of his side of things right now, which is interesting to see. Kind of the fear, the paranoia that either she's been killed, kidnapped, or perhaps even scarier that she just chose to leave him and run away somewhere. And what's funny, obviously, is that we know that none of those options are technically true, but and that's something that's eventually the superstitious lady with the Reverend gives the theory that's actually correct. We know is correct, that she traveled through time, but naturally he doesn't really believe that. It's just this superstitious nonsense. But he's so
goes out there anyway, just in case.
Yeah, he has that moment when he's leaving towards the end where he kind of turns back and goes up the hill because he's passing by anyway. And there's kind of simultaneously we're seeing her, Claire at the rocks in the past. Now, obviously, it's not really simultaneous because different times. So it's this it doesn't have to match up in any way, shape, or form. But this is how it's been presented to us. And there's kind of a moment where, like, if she was able to touch the rocks, would she have traveled back right now? And
and it plays it like they can kind of hear each other shouting through time, and I don't know if that is literal or not, or if they're just or if the way it's playing.
Yeah.
But I was surprised where it didn't do a cliffhanger moment on when she's reaching towards the rock. Like that felt like there's only a couple of minutes left after that, but it felt like, oh, that was the moment that it was going to end on, and it didn't quite do that.
Yeah, it's a very eventful few minutes, though, to be fair, that come after that. But
it is, and I'm not saying that the bad, we'll get into them, but it was an interesting choice, because it felt like this conclusion, like this ending point, and then it's, no, never mind, we'll do this other bit instead.
Yeah, it's kind of an interesting sort of contrast between, like, her starting to feel happier and more at home with these other characters. Not even just with Jamie, but she's like learning how to use a knife properly from some of the others. Angus is the one kind of training her, and she feels like she's more a part of the group. Dougal looks miserable. I think he's just sitting there jealous. Like he's sitting there in a little clump for a lot of this, but the rest of them all seem to really be accepting her as part of the group now, and it's kind of sweet. And then on the flip side, you see Frank at the police station, and like the poor policeman is just kind of like, look, we've searched miles and miles. We've interviewed hundreds of people. There's nothing more we can do. But Frank's just like, do your damn job. It's like, what else can I do?
Yeah, it's being a little bit unreasonable, but
yeah, you're kind of empathetic though, because like obviously
it's like grieving, desperate, sort of like in that headspace. It's understandable, but also I get why everyone else is getting a bit annoyed at him.
It's a sad thing where it's like, it almost doesn't matter what the reason for her disappearance is at this point. It's been long enough that you kind of have to let her go, because I think it's the Reverend who says, in one way or another, she's let you go. And, it's not entirely true in terms that she's not really made a conscious choice, but she kind of has in a way, because she has kind of started to integrate with these other people. And if she was dead, then she would have let him go. If she had chosen to run away with someone from the get-go, then that would also be her letting him go. Like, in every single scenario, whether it's like a malicious thing that's happened or just an adulterous thing that's happened, like in one way or another, she has let him go by this point. And obviously, not 100% true. She does run to the Rock. She does like care about him still. It's not like she's like left him behind. She's still wearing the ring. But yeah, there is some truth to that. But at the same time, I guess it makes us sort of side with him a little bit because we know that deep down, no, that's not entirely, completely 100% true because she still does care. So,
oh yeah,
you know,
she definitely does, but it's fading a little bit.
well, she feels guilty because she kind of like realizes at a certain point in the episode that she's kind of forgotten she was trying to get to Craigna Doon.
She got a little bit comfortable. It's like, I could just stay here, and then she gets that realization.
Yeah, and she feels really good, and then realizes she's there. She's like right next to it, and she can literally just jog on over. And obviously she gets picked up by the Redcoats, and that kind of sends us down our next plot beat. But seeing people try to take advantage of Frank by pretending they know something about the mysterious guy outside the hotel, and it just been like this thing. Obviously he fights back, and part of me was wondering, like, they're going to like have him get a little vicious and sort of show that some of those genes that he's got from his ancestor are still in there. He's still got a little bit of a mean streak if he's pushed to it, kind of thing. I don't think it ever quite got there, at least not in this episode. It was more just like, yeah, they try and pick on him and basically mug him, and he's in no mood to be effed with right now.
No, and he kind of takes him out.
Yeah, to the point where the woman who tricked him starts like begging him not to kill them, which is why I thought it was maybe going to go a bit further, but it never quite did. Which is fine. Instead, though, you're back with the empathy because you see him crying at the rocks and he's kind of letting the emotions out. Everyone's kind of walking on eggshells around it. It really does feel like she's died. Like that's what it kind of feels like. This is like a grieving man who's lost his wife, and everyone's kind of.
And that must be how they feel.
Yeah, it must be. Yeah. And that's basically what they're telling him is like, just take it as she's dead. Whether that's true or not, in effect to your life, she is.
Yeah.
So it's all very sad and depressing, I guess, is the best way of putting it.
It is, but it's kind of ultimately the only way it could be. For the show to continue, you have to have this kind of be the tone.
Oh yeah, no, that's what makes sense. And part of me was wondering when he was given this theory that she went through time. Part of me thought that, is he going to see some like piece of evidence from the past that she's there? Because that wouldn't be that unreasonable or that contrived if he starts looking through records. If there's stories of a English woman who showed up and whatever, like is there some kind of piece of evidence that would suggest that it's her in the past? Obviously, we're dealing with a time period before photographs and things like that, so you can't quite have that eureka visual moment. But maybe a drawing of her would suffice.
Maybe we know he's obviously interested in looking at that part of history already. Mm-hmm. So
yeah,
not that he'll be looking specifically for her, but if he's continuing looking, as I'm sure after a while he will get back to looking into what he was before.
Yeah, for work.
Maybe that's when he'll pick stuff up on.
Yeah, I mean, it wouldn't surprise me if we cut to a scene in him in Oxford or wherever at the end of the season or sometime down the line, and he, sees something that sort of wait a minute, is that her? That would be interesting because the seed's been planted in his head. As unbelievable as it is, that the seed is there, so that if he does see something, it is going to sort of connect with it. It's not just going to be in the void, as it were, which is cool. And obviously there was the brief moment as well. I'm like, wait, is he going to travel through the past? Because that'd get awkward very quickly.
Yeah, that would be awkward.
It would be awkward, but then you think, yeah, but he could also put on a red coat and pretend to be the villain for a bit if they need to like sneak in somewhere or something.
That could be useful.
Yeah,
who knows? Maybe that's still something the show might do later, like significantly later at this point. Now, if it didn't do it now, it would have to be quite a while later.
Oh yeah, it didn't really feel like something the show would do, but it's the sort of thing where if they're going to take a big swing at some point, like someone else traveling would be the big swing to take. Yeah. So I mean that was basically Frank's side of things that I wanted to mention. I think the main stuff. There's a lot of stuff in here I like. There's a couple of little things that bugged me. Like I love her training to use the knife or the skiing do as it's called, and it just bugged me that she needed to use it in like almost the next scene she was in. That was a bit forced to me.
That was very TV arc writing.
Yeah.
Okay, this has to happen. So you learn, so she has to use it, and Honestly, I would have preferred it to have gone a few episodes before it came up.
I mean, I expected it to be by the end of the episode. I was just gobsmacked. It was the very next scene. Like, you know, she's having the happy scene where she's learning to use it, and then the very next scene is her and Jamie getting frisky, and the two redcoats show up and try and rape her. Obviously, it gets very dark, but she uses the knife, and it's obviously exactly the sort of moment she's been training to use it for. But it just felt a little quick to just immediately be thrown into a situation where it was going to be useful and she was going to do it. But
yeah, like, just how convenient is it that as soon as you learn, you've got it ready and this just happens.
Yeah. So, it's not a big deal, but it is something that kind of stuck out to me. It definitely felt like they're pushing towards like darker things happening. And it was interesting to me that at the end of the episode, that when she's back with Jack, that like things are getting very nefarious. He's like basically saying he's going to torture her and get all this information out of her, and then starts to undress her. He's about to rape her, and we get the big heroic entrance of Jamie at the end to kind of save her. And that ending did make me kind of go a little bit, not because of like. I think it's because there was already an attempted rape earlier in the episode that it felt like I was convinced it was going to happen at the end. I was convinced that the reason why you have the save, not that someone saved her, she saved herself earlier in the episode, but the reason why you sort of do it and then do it again later in the episode is like, no, this is the world she's in, and it like this was sadly inevitable or something like that. But I do know from the comments, because when we said things were very dark, not last episode, but the one with Jack,
where he gave the monologues.
Yeah, the comments were basically saying things like, "Oh, that's cute. You think that's dark, or you don't know anything yet, or stuff to that effect." It was like, okay, all right, things are going to get pretty bad at certain points.
Good. I don't mean that in that.
Oh, yeah.
I wanted to be really dark and edgy, but. We really enjoyed that aspect of the character, so leaning into that
for sure.
It sounds like things that we'll enjoy.
I think the reason why I'm bringing that up is that I think if I have another small critique of this episode, despite the fact that it teases some very dark things that are very effective in the moment, it does kind of feel like Jamie's showing up like with the gun in his hand at the end, and like it feels very piratey and it feels very adventure-y. He's here to save the damsel kind of moment, and I think the show has had great bite and has felt really dark and tense because it's not felt like it's just a lighthearted adventure. And I think this episode made me go, something bad needs to happen soon to like give it back that edge in a way.
I agree. I think it's a case of, because this is at least the third attempted rape of her now, at least.
And it doesn't have to be specifically that. I'm not saying I want to see that specifically happen.
No, of course not. But it's more, okay, there's a lot of bad things that keep almost happening. And it's almost at some point something has to happen. No, it doesn't even necessarily just have to be to her, but something has to happen to someone.
It's the if it eventually keeps almost happening but keeps getting thwarted at the last second, it starts to feel a bit plot armory. And I think eventually you have to have the bad thing just happen, whether it be this or something else, just to because I think it has felt very threatening, and it's not felt what's this phrase used when something's soft tooth, not soft tooth, when toothless. It's it's always had teeth. That's what I was going for, right? So it's always had teeth. It's always felt like the threats have been real. So that episode where she was with Jack in the dining room for the long stretch, all of it felt like edge of your seat. It all felt real, like the tension was real, and that she's really under threat, and bad things might really happen to her. I think this episode, bizarrely, by the end of it, well, everything that happened was fairly well done, and I was enjoying everything. It kind of felt at the end like, oh, it kind of feels like she's always going to be saved at the last second now. So I feel like soon something bad of some kind is going to happen to her to give us that back, where it's like, oh no, she is in danger.
Do you know what I think would have fixed the problem this time specifically? Don't have Jamie show up now. Have him show up at the start of the next one.
That's fair, yeah.
I think if you just leave it on the cliffhanger of the threat, the implication of what's about to happen, and then you pick up next time, and it's still the exact same, heroic rescue. There he is at the window with the pistol. You can still do exactly that, but I think having it at the start of the episode instead of the final moment completely changes the context and the tone of that.
Yeah, it also does mean it ends in a really dark cliffhanger as well, which is maybe why they didn't do that, is they wanted to give the audience the bit of release at the end.
Maybe, but more tension in leaving it for a week Well, I mean, I think
sure,
actually this was longer, wasn't it? Because there was a mid-season gap here, wasn't there?
That's right. This is a mid-season. Yeah, this is the mid-season gap. Yeah.
So thinking about it that way, even more reason I think for me to leave it on that threat is get them to come back and see, as opposed to everything's not in a good place because obviously still lots of danger and things, but relative to what it could have been.
Yeah. Like, it feels like the heroes. I'm sure it won't be easy because like Jack's a bastard, and I'm sure there'll be some fallout to this immediately. But yeah, I don't know, it's just one of those little things where it felt a little too like light and heroic the way Jamie popped in at the end.
Yeah.
So I think that's something that, but again, because the comments are implying that it's going to get really dark, I'm not really worried about it, regaining its bite a little bit. But I did think about it a little bit towards the end of this episode because of that ending. But I still liked how it handled a lot of the moments in it. I like Claire's shock after stabbing the red coat earlier on in the episode.
Yeah, I like when she kind of realizes that she's in shock.
Mm-hmm.
And obviously no one else there has any idea what she's on about.
Yeah, it's very clinical. She's like, oh, my hands are cold and I'm shaking. Oh, wait, I'm in shock. Like she deduces it because of her knowledge. She knows what that is.
Yeah. Obviously that doesn't help her snap out of it. It's just going through the motions. And I do like that, it's because I think this will be the first time I don't know if she actually kills him or not. Like, I don't know if it makes that explicit.
I think she, I mean, if she didn't.
It felt like it.
Yeah,
like she did. Yeah,
I think she did, and if she didn't, then the other guys definitely finished him off.
Yeah, so it didn't feel like this is the first time she's, despite having been on more or less the front lines in the war, this is the first time she's taken her life as opposed to saving them. Yeah. I think that's very different for her, and that's understandable to have this reaction. If anything, I expect to see more of that next time.
Very possibly. I really enjoyed some of the music in this. I mean, the music's been pretty good throughout, but I really liked the music when we had like the two of them at the rocks on either time period. I thought the music during that part was particularly good.
Yeah, that was excellent stuff.
Yeah, that was really nice, captivating. I got a little chuckle. They get attacked early on at camp, but it's not a big attack. It's kind of what inspires them to teach her how to use a knife because she just kind of has to hide when this happens. But I think it's Ned, the lawyer, shoots someone with his little pistol, and he's so proud of himself that he hit him. I thought that was kind of cute.
In his defense, it was that was a reasonable distance,
20 paces. I mean, at the time, that's probably. I think now with a gun, 20 paces is not considered that exceptional.
It's not that impressive, but I think with those flintlock pistols that they've got there,
yeah, not too accurate, I imagine.
Not at all.
Yeah, but he's very proud of himself, and I got a chuckle out of that.
Yeah,
got a good chuckle. Some other plot things to mention is Jamie was going to meet with a redcoat who's like went rogue because he might be able to like clear his name in the murders that he's accused of. So we don't really get to hear what happened there because obviously it's when he's away doing that all the Claire being taken by the redcoats and taken to Jack happens. So
yeah, and obviously now Jack obviously already had a personal vendetta against him, but even more so now at the end.
Well, that's the thing. So I actually really like this. So as much as I was maybe a little critical of the feeling of like maybe nothing bad can really happen to her that was presented by the end, I did like some of I liked it. Her tactic here to use some of her knowledge of the future to shake him a little bit, I thought was great, and I also thought it was even greater that because she's not actually an expert, he was able to like trick her within like a minute. It was like, okay, she knows that this powerful person in the military or whatever, or the royal court. There you go, the Duke. That's what it was. He's protecting me. He's letting me away with all this bad shit. And the fact that you know that is kind of weird and concerning. Like, you should not know that. That is like, he spits up his drink. He actually is taken aback by that. But then she tries to sort of say, oh, I'm also working for him. So he immediately just tricks her by saying, oh, what about the wife? It turns out he has no wife, and she, puts her foot in it. I appreciated both parts to that. I thought the plan was great, and then I thought it was good how he was very quickly able to like see through it. But now the question remains: how did she know that? And from his perspective, that's going to be like,
Yeah, I think it's really telling me the way those two bounce off each other. Between this scene here and the longer ones that we had in the episode before, the back and forth between the two of them is really a high point of the show.
Yeah, no, it's really good. It's just this, like, she's really holding her own, but he's just so much of a devious bastard that he's just kind of going one step ahead every time.
Yeah.
And it's kind of exciting to watch. And I think her and Jamie have great chemistry as well in a very different way, obviously, because it's the romance, it's the sweetness of it, which makes the entire trio work as a group of characters to, build your story around. So.
Yeah, we haven't actually had too much of Jamie and Jack together yet.
Just the flogging, really. So obviously there's the moment here where he recognizes him and he's like, oh, this is your husband. Oh, he gets really interested.
I am looking forward to seeing more of that dynamic at play as well.
It's a really interesting triangle. It's not a love triangle, obviously, but it's a triangle of characters.
Definitely, yes, it is definitely a triangle.
Yeah, it's a very interesting triangle because of the dynamics between each pair. That's very different. And obviously one is very much on the other side compared to the other two because he's the villain, but they all have some kind of relationship with each other that is potentially fascinating to watch. So, yeah. I think this is a pretty solid episode overall. There's a lot of really exciting moments in it, and there's a lot of tense moments in it. It's just almost the... it almost makes me wonder if they just wanted to squeeze in just a little bit too much before their mid-season break. So the episode just, does a bit too much. And as a result, maybe just hurts it a touch by the end.
Yeah, like I said, I think maybe leaving it on that moment where she's getting dragged away from the rocks by the redcoats probably would have been a stronger ending for the episode.
Yeah, because my feeling of, Jamie showing up and saving her at the last second, feeling like, we've almost had this twice in one episode. I wouldn't have had that because that'd have been, the next episode.
The next one, yeah.
Yeah. And especially at the time it aired because it would have been, at least, I imagine, a few months or something, but with the mid-season break.
I'd have thought so, yeah.
So, I think there's a few quirks to this one that I did feel was worth pointing out. I liked it more than the last because, we were both pretty adamant that the wedding episode was probably our least favourite.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Not terrible, but definitely not our favourite episode.
Still good. I mean, I think that's a good sign, though, that even the episodes that aren't firing on all cylinders, we're still seeing like character moments and things that are good because we're invested in the characters, we're invested in what they're doing.
And it's worth noting that's because obviously you can get that feeling on a show 4 or 5 seasons in because you've just spent enough, just brute force time with them that you care enough, even through those mediocre episodes. Well, that was only episode 7. Not been in the grand scheme of things, not that much time spent with the characters compared to being on 3rd, 4th, 5th season of a show. So the fact that it can still kind of coast by on those characters, even in a weaker episode, it's a good sign for the long run of the show.
Yeah, I think we're saying weaker in comparison. I don't necessarily know if I'd call the wedding episode a weak episode. Like,
yes,
blanket.
It's all relative to the standards of where we've been enjoying the other episodes.
Yeah, I mean, I think episodes 4, 5, 6 were really like such a strong trio of episodes that like any faults that we're having with this episode says it's just it's in comparison to that, and we can kind of feel some of the differences. But I'm definitely excited to see like where we're going to go now that we've kind of established that these characters all know about each other in some way now. Like Jack knows about Jamie, knows that he's with Claire. He obviously has questions about her name and all these other things. Like all these questions being raised, I do wonder if the catalyst for her telling something to Jamie is because maybe Jamie hears, or maybe Jack says in front of him, your name doesn't track. There's something not right about this name that you said you had. And I wonder if Jamie then says, what's he talking about? Like, I'm your husband. You can tell me, I wonder if that's the catalyst to like getting her to like want to just confess to someone and be honest with someone.
Yeah, it's definitely a matter of when, not if.
Absolutely.
I still think probably maybe by the end of this season we'll get just Jamie in on it.
Yeah. I could totally see that. It also wouldn't surprise me if someone unexpected ends up kind of hearing it, and it's because sometimes you can elevate a character in a show like this by having someone who's a relatively minor character be in on the secret, and all of a sudden they become way more important because they've been let in that. I don't know who that would be. I don't know if it's Angus or Willie or whoever. Like just someone hears it and thinks that she's crazy or something, and maybe we can go from there.
The interesting choice would be someone like Ned, because he's a bit, he's not one of the younger guys. He's not in like the full main group in the same way that the rest of them are.
Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, but no, I'm curious to see what they do. Because I suspect there might be a little bit of an action set piece at the start of the next episode, perhaps with Jamie's daring rescue, and
it'll either do that or it'll jump ahead and we'll maybe kind of play with the format again like we did last time.
Yeah. And I suspect, if nothing else, Claire's not going to be just in a happy-go-lucky mood because she's just been rescued. She's going to be fairly traumatized by this, and I suspect some stuff emotionally, if not actual details of where she came from, might come up because of that.
Yeah, and especially as during this scene, she felt like she was in such a strong position, pulling out all the knowledge. She felt like she had the upper hand.
Yeah, she was
in control. She was about to just walk out the door.
I would argue she is cocky at a certain point in this scene.
Yeah. Then to have that reversal and kind of be taken down so far.
Which is a good sell of the villain, actually, that he does flip it completely and take it back. And it's like, no. Because part of me thought, this is the ending. She's going to walk out of her own accord, all like, chin held high. And instead, he just completely obliterates it.
Bluff, yeah.
Yeah. And, puts her in one of the most precarious positions she could be in. So, there's a lot of good stuff in this episode. And there's definitely a lot of things I'm excited about going forward. But maybe just not quite as tight as like 4, 5, and 6 overall. So, yeah.
I agree with that.
There you go. That's both sides now. Episode 8 of Outlander will be back next week with episode 9. Apologies for the week off. I was on vacation. So, we're back in action now. And we'll see you next time for episode 9. So let us know what you thought of the episode in the comments below. Like, subscribe, ding the bell for notifications, all that stuff. Of course, you can support all the content and keep it all coming by either going over to patreon.com/MailFuzzTV and supporting us on a monthly basis and getting some bonuses, or hitting the super thanks button on YouTube, or you can support us for free by doing all the YouTube clicky things that I mentioned before. Everything and anything is what I think I'm trying to say is appreciated. Thank you very much for joining us. We always appreciate it. Keep watching Outlander. And of course, if you have any problems with a demonic possession, say, maybe you need an exorcism. You're in the market for an exorcism. That's when you call Father Bane. I will expel the demons from you, child. Yes.